Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Charlitas episode. We are super excited to have you guys join us for yet another episode. We are the Mariposas with Latino Leadership Northwest. My name is Sam Meza, she, her, ella pronouns.
I'm Pamela, also she, her, ella pronouns.
My name is Alma, also she, her, ella pronouns.
And today is extra special because we have our very first guest on the podcast, Almendra.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm so happy and honored to be here. My name's Almendra Velasquez, she, her, ella pronouns. And yeah, I'm an environmental activist.
Thank you. And so just for you guys to let to know each other better, we're going to be doing an icebreaker. So the icebreaker will be, what is your favorite season and activity? So I'll go first. My favorite season and activity. My favorite season is spring. And honestly, my activity would be to just sit around and read a good book.
My favorite season is winter. And that's because my birthday falls in the winter months. Actually, February is my birthday month. So it's still valid. It's still valid if you guys want to wish me a happy birthday even a month later.
Happy late birthday.
Thank you.
My favorite season, I feel like it's always changing, but as of now, I would say it's the fall. And my favorite activity is probably just going on a nature walk and looking at all the leaf color changes.
So my favorite season is actually fall because there's something really calm about fall where, it's cold but not too cold and you can sit next to a fireplace and read a good book.
And you may be wondering, why is that our icebreaker? Why are we talking about our favorite season? And that's because this episode's topic will focus on climate justice. And when we were thinking about climate justice, one of the first things we thought about was, the weather around us, especially here in Vancouver, Washington, how it hasn't been the same in these past few years. For example, the summers, those used to not have as much hot days, or the winter, there used to be it just used to be different. I think there used to be more snow or something before, and now we don't see as much snow, or the cold temperatures are really, really cold.
Or even prolonged. Right now we're seeing that we have snow falling in March, even in February. And it's very rare, or I guess not rare, but it's unusual because that's when spring would usually start. So yeah, that's one of the things that we had in mind when we were talking about climate justice and the weather.
And so we brought on Almendra because Almendra has some background. She's our expert in this topic. I don't want to put the pressure on. She knows the best in this topic, more than us for sure. So, Almendra, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested and started in the environment and in overall climate justice?
I think it comes from my lived experience living in California, coming from, poverty in a minority community. I didn't notice how, I was affected by climate change and how, my loved ones were at risk of health impacts from climate change. Not until later on when I, decided to go into environmental science. And I mainly wanted to study environmental science because I just loved being outdoors. I loved connecting with nature and exploring. But later on, the more I got into it and just realizing how, there's all these impacts and no one really talks about it, just made me more passionate about trying to, get the word out to my community. And I always thought about my mom as well. She's in the front lines. Her job is in agriculture, so she is directly impacted if, when there's unpredictable agricultural patterns or, intense heat waves, those kind of things. And she has very, very little protection. So when I think about environmental justice, I think about my mom and I think about my loved ones and my community. It's really close to heart. So yeah.
That's actually very sweet. Before we get started, to lay some background knowledge, how would you, because when we were planning for this, you gave us a really good metaphor to remember the difference between climate versus weather, because I know a lot of people have that kind of confused and kind of mixed up. So would you mind?
Yeah. Before I give the metaphor, I'll just explain. So weather is more of like a report daily of what you expect to experience, like, temperature wise. Is it going to be cloudy, sunny, windy, those kind of conditions? And then climate is the measurement of daily weather over time, over a long period of time, to help us predict or get a bigger picture of averages happening or trends happening. It can be something measured locally or globally. And the metaphor that I like to use is thinking about like a picture where there's like all these little pixels, but when you put all these pixels together and you zoom out, you see the bigger picture. That's what I think of, like pixels being the weather report or conditions, and the whole picture being climate. Climate's when we study climate, helps us predict what we might expect to experience tomorrow or in the future. Yeah, climate change is not really happening like exponentially. It's just like all over the place. Yeah. So it's very hard to predict what kind of weather prediction or what we will experience tomorrow.
So for the students out there, if you guys want to use this information in your papers, make sure to reference us.
At Charlitas.
At Charlitas.
Episode 3.
Yeah. In the references, please. You don't want to get, plagiarized or something.
No, yeah. And going back to, how you mentioned talking about environment and how you think about your parents, right? When we were discussing this, you also mentioned the sustainability pillars, and under one of them, health was one of the things we talked about. And I think that's something that is not talked about a lot when we think about environment.
So would you mind explaining to us the 3 pillars of sustainability in terms of climate justice?
Yeah. So climate justice, it's about addressing, again, how some communities contribute less to climate change but are affected the most. And essentially, like long term, we hope that it just overall, we can all contribute to a sustainable way of living. And the 3 pillars of sustainability is social, environment, and the economy. And, health would fall under social, addressing that there is a health disparity among different communities of color.
I know also under social would fall in like activism, and one of the activists that is specifically who identifies as Hispanic or Latino would be Cesar Chavez. And I know in March this month, there's a Cesar Chavez Day, right?
Yes. I believe it is March 31st.
And sometimes when we discuss like environmental justice and in the Latino community, his name tends to pop up at times because of the work that he did.
He did a lot of work for the migrant population that are directly affected by intense weather conditions or climate. The work doesn't stop there, though. There is still more that we should do and recognize that our not just our Hispanic community, but just in general, like farm workers are in the front lines of climate change.
And that reminds me, like that was such a long time ago, right? That was a few years ago. And when people think climate change, they don't think of it as like a win. No, they think of climate change as a win and not as like something that is happening now. And I know in college, I took one climate change class, I think a year or 2 ago. And I used to think of, when in the future, climate change, like, that'll be when I'm older or my grandkids or whatever. But when I took that class and we like studied, different regions and different graphs, and we saw all the numbers and the effects and the outcomes, it's happening now, and it's mostly affecting like minority groups or
people on the front lines.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important. Like some people like it's happening now. Like climate change is happening now, and it's not in the future, and it has been happening for the past few years too. So, which is why it's so important to have these conversations and to talk about like what it is, what you can do, like what are some things that I don't know one can do, because I know we have another mariposa who's not here, but Jair, he loves to thrift. And when we were talking about climate justice, that was like our first thought, like, oh, Jair loves to thrift. And people don't really see thrifting as a
Sustainable?
like
a sustained way to reuse, I guess you would say.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it also falls under, I say, the economic pillar where, you don't have to overconsume. There's already, things that are still in good use and you can continue to use.
And even now, like with the youth, there's a very big trend of overconsumption. And
Fast trends.
Yeah. And but when we were talking about this, like the Latino community has been recycling for a while now. Like, I don't know if you guys have, los Tupperwares or like containers del cream cheese or del butter or
the Daisy sour cream.
I recently saw though on TikTok, someone was showcasing, the coffee containers, the coffee grinds. Yeah, they're made out of glass, right? So what they do is they reuse those constantly and put in different like how do you say it? Oh my gosh. For food, oh my gosh. What's Spices. Yeah, that's what spices. That's not it. Yeah. And so I think that's very cool, right? Because they're reusing that and they're not just throwing it away. No, they're finding another purpose for that.
Or the plastic bags. Like I know, ahorita empezaron a cobrar, like now you gotta pay like 8 cents per bag. But we still use those bags. Like we've been using those bags. Those bags usan pues para la basura. Those bags hold our old clothes that have been sitting in the garage for like 50, 100 years. Like there's, Yeah,
and like another thing in the Latino community is like, I don't know about you, I have older siblings, and so my parents would pass down la ropa from the older siblings to me. And like, I guess in the moment you don't think like, that's recycling. Like that's a good sustainability habit. And at the time, or like when I was younger, I'd be like, I got the old clothes of my sister. Like, what the heck? I want my own clothes. But now seeing it, it's like Latino parents have been that pillar of sustainability without even us realizing it. And it's very prominent because, like you said, the Tupperwares, the trash bags, the clothes, they have been doing it since day one. And that's like, shout out to them.
But also, like, it makes me wonder, like, does that happen? Could a factor be also because they just, because there's no other choice. Like they just,
that too.
Yeah. And so then that also plays a role kind of in climate justice. There's no other option.
Yeah. And that's another way to also encourage people to live with healthier habits is that, you'll save money if you recycle and, just live more sustainable. It's overall good.
And then there's the other side, because I'm like remembering what I saw on TikTok, but there's like the people who shame people for not recycling or for not reusing because of whatever. But if you, for example, for like clothes, and people don't want to buy like new clothes, they want to go the recycled clothes, but sometimes those recycled clothes or clothes made out of recycled material is super expensive.
Yeah. I definitely recommend to get clothes with good material that you can have for a long period of time. Like this cotton shirt, like I've had it, I think, for a couple of years, and I'm sure like it's still in really good condition. I'll continue to use it. So, I would say avoid the fast trends with cheaper material and go for something that will last you a long time and you can pass it on.
Oh, but also let's mention how some thrift stores or some stores in particular have been raising those prices a lot.
Yeah.
And so it makes it even harder for people. For those specifically, like I'm not talking about the resellers, because I see y'all resellers going to those thrift stores and buying those clothes and pricing them really expensive when other people could be using those clothes. So there's so many factors in it, and it's not all black and white.
But I think that also like goes to another point where we were talking about that we shouldn't be destroying, right, our planet, because we only have one. And I think that's something that we should really like focus on and talk about more, because, or it's something that should really be talked about in schools. Like you mentioned that one class in college, but unfortunately you only really get those classes once you're in college. They're not being like shared out in high school or middle school. Like I personally don't remember much info on that. I would just hear the reuse, recycle,
Right.
but that's it.
It was a prereq too, so.
But still, you know,
Yeah.
you got to learn the info.
That's true. And that's why it's also important that, like, you know, again, like trying to reach our parents and letting them know these kind of things. Because like I mentioned, like when I was living in California, I had no idea that, you know, the reason why we're affected so much by climate change was because, we're in the front lines. No one really educates us that much. And not a whole lot of things are translated to our parents' native language.
That's a big one. That's that, like that translation or even the basic knowledge is sometimes missed. That's true.
Back to like basic knowledge, right? Sometimes we even just confuse the terms climate justice and environmental justice. So do you have like any definitions for those that we could probably get to differentiate both of those terms?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're pretty similar. They're, again, like I mentioned, they're both trying to address the communities that contribute less to climate change but are affected the most. However, environmental justice looks more specifically at social injustices, like how they're kind of like overlayered, how some people in power will make decisions that affect a certain population or put them more at risk of climate impacts. And I can think of one of like there was like a case study one in Texas, I believe, where the city was purposely adding or communities of color were around landfills, and so there was like they had higher health risk, and they're already like vulnerable to other risks. So yeah, it just makes the impact even greater.
And I know another community who has suffered a lot with the environment and climate is the Native community. Obviously, like this was their land. This is their land from the start, and unfortunately, it's not the same as it used to be, and there's a lot of harm.
Yeah. For example, here in the Pacific Northwest, culturally, like they rely on the salmon runs for their rituals, and due to climate change, we've been seeing salmon population reduce, which then they get less access to their healthy foods.
And I literally just learned about that like a few months ago from one of my professors whose passion is on like Native work and what in their community. And only because she has a focus on that is the reason why she taught us that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have never known. And she showed us like a clip and about how like they're suffering because there's
Just
a decrease.
Human activity overall.
Yeah. And so now I'm like to my family, like, no se comen los salmones, no son for us.
Yeah.
Like other people need it. And I remember also like they had us go on at WSUV, they try to honor a lot of.
Yes.
And so they had us go like on a walk around our campus, and they had somebody who was Native and like pointing out trees and telling us like their names and how they're known as. And I remember a specific story that stuck with me with like the little pine cones. And they said that they used to say that once upon a time, once upon a few years back, there was like a fire and all the little animals like rushed up to the trees to hide. And so the little pine cones, you can kind of see like the rat tails. And now every time I look at those pine cones, I have like a new lens and like appreciative of those pine cones because of that story.
Yeah. Again, the natives they were doing like a sustainable way of living way before, before anybody knew what sustainability really was. So I love hearing their stories and honoring them because they took care of this land before we got here. And that's another thing, like really honoring the elders who took care of this land, and also acknowledging that now it's our turn. Connecting and recognizing that it's not just like a tree's not just an object. It is part of our community as well.
And how what's that phrase goes? That's like if you take care of the planet will take care of you.
Yeah, sustaining what sustains you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of this bigger picture. I can give like a little brief example. For example, the salmons who come from the ocean, and the nutrients they bring in from the ocean, and they drop it off here in our rivers. It's nutritious, I guess, for the trees and the plants in this region. They just adapted that way. And then there's other native species that again rely on those plants, and then we eat those animals, and it's just like this whole cycle.
In school, so I'm an education major, and so when I remember back to my small Sam days, I remember how they were really big on like reduce, reuse, recycle. And I have this one specific memory where I don't know if it was for Earth Day or if it was for some other time, but it was this big assembly and we all got together, and then they played a song, and it was We Will Rock You version, but for green version. So they had the whole assembly, K to 5, reading the lyrics, singing along, and everybody was like, we will recycle.
I like that.
And so I hadn't thought about it at all until we were coming up with this episode, and I was like, wait, I've been recycling, guys. I got proof. I know the song. And so I tried finding the lyrics before it so that I could bust out singing it all, but I couldn't find them. I only remember that part, but I remember everybody was all the kids were on the ground just we will recycle.
I have one song. When I was in 6th grade, we went to this field trip up in the mountains for a school field trip. And I remember they taught us this song called, I can't remember what it was called, but it goes, scat makes the world go round. And when I was learning the song, I was like, why are we talking about poop? But later on, I learned that it's because keeping that nutrition on the ground, it goes back into the soil. The soil needs those specific minerals for to keep the plants happy and healthy. So yeah, scat keeps the world going round.
Well, and I think something it doesn't just help us humans, but there's endangered species now because of not really taking care of the environment, right? I also took some classes in college, and we talked about salamander that is now endangered here, and we even did we tested them, right? We went out to a trail and we gathered some and we tested them. But I mean, I've been living here in Washington for my whole life, basically, and I didn't know that these species were endangered. Mm-hmm. And they explained to us, right, because of the ecology of how the environment is changing, that those are being affected, that they're endangered species now, and that's sad to hear.
Yeah. Well, change is natural for any species. However, at the rate of change that we're seeing, not a whole lot of species can adapt very quickly. And unfortunately, salmon are one of those species that are more sensitive to their environment. So yeah, that's why we see some species more endangered than others.
So now that we've discussed some of the negative effects of climate change, I think it's really important that we talk about some of the things that we do that go unseen and that we don't realize affect the planet, right? Like one that I can think of up the top of my head is search engines, specifically like AI, have become very popular right now because you know of how easy they are to use to do like your homework or whatever. But did you guys know that a lot of water is used to cool down those search engines because thousands of people are using them at the same time, right? And for them to be working efficiently and at that fast pace that they do, they need a lot of water consumption. And not a lot of people know that. Like, were you guys aware of that?
I wasn't, and yeah, like AI suddenly like started popping up everywhere. When Snapchat got that feature, I was like, what? Why is there an AI in Snapchat? I still think that's super weird. Do I talk to it? Sometimes.
They are useful, but just be aware of like, you know, what you use it for. It's got to be something like, you know, important, like kind of reduce your like amount of searching that you do. But yeah, so they use a lot of water, and you know, it's concerning because our aquifers don't get recharged at the same amount, at the same rate that we're consuming water.
Which that like reminds me, our water usage is like decreasing significantly, right? And the amount that we get back, rainfall, that's one way we get water back, but it's not enough to replace what we're using. And it's sad to see that locally, right? We see if you're going down 205, the Columbia River, during the summer, you can see the bottom. And I just think that that's very sad, right? Because that's one of our biggest rivers here locally. And to see that like depleted, it's really sad.
In such like few years too, because I remember like when I was little, we'd drive by there and like it was full, like you couldn't see the bottom, right? And now, I guess I didn't really pay attention to it before, but now like looking at it and inspecting it more closely, like you see how far down the water is, and that's like very concerning.
Yeah, for sure, and especially again for sensitive species, you know, they need like certain tides when they're in their mating season or reproducing. So yeah, that's concerning as well.
God, I wish I don't remember the name right now. Maybe it's Beacon Rock. I don't remember. Mi familia always calls it just La Roca, and it's like it's near Vancouver. It's like in Camas, I think. It's like 30-40 minutes out, and it's La Roca, and there's a hike. And if you reach all the way to the top, it has a really pretty view out of the river. And a long time ago, I'm talking about probably when I was still in middle school. I have a picture. We took a picture, and it was really pretty. There was still a lot of greenery. Like there was still a lot of water. And then recently, a few years back, we went again, and I took a picture. And when I was comparing those two pictures, there was significant changes with just like water level and like the greenery. And I was just very shocked to see how different that view now looked from antes and then ahora. So yeah, that made me just think about that. Think about like you don't really see those changes happening, but like they did happen because it happened over a matter of a few years.
Yeah, and that's the concerning part is the rate of change, and not a lot of species can keep up with that.
That's true. And I know Alma was talking about endangered species, and one of those species that is, you know, at that point, but is very, very important for the environment and for our planet are bees. And, you know, bees are like, not a lot of people like bees. If a bee's flying around you, like people will freak out and be like, yeah, it's a bee. And I remember feeling so sad when I found out that bees, if they sting you, like that's it. They're dead. Like they pass away. And they have such an important contribution. And it's really sad to see that, you know, their numbers are decreasing, but there's people who are doing work to help the bees. Because they're just so important. Like I don't know. And yeah.
You just populating pollinators. There you go. Just sorry. Okay. Yes, pollinators just in general are really important for our local ecosystem. They rely on, again, native species that have been here for a long time. And when we came in and introduced different plants like rose bushes, like our abuelas, they love their rose bushes, but not all of them are native. So it's just, important to keep in mind that it's fine if you have a few like of your favorite flowers in your garden, but also try to introduce some native species that have more of that nutritious value for the native pollinators, like bees. Yeah.
Real quick, I know butterflies, mariposas, are pollinators as well, not to that extent of bees, but shout out to mariposas because they're, because they're also pollinators. So, yeah.
Save the bees and las mariposas. And I know a lot of people are haters with, like, when it comes to insects. Like, don't blame me. If I see a spider, I start freaking out. But, insects do also play a really big role in just the way the ecosystem works. And, those ants aren't here to fight you. They're just trying to live, and they're trying to do their own thing. But I think people also tend to forget how, like, big of the bigger picture, even if they're a tiny, tiny organism.
Like, we're all interconnected. And, like, we need to realize that, like, what we do affect the bottom ring, and then that affects the bottom ring, and it keeps on going on. So we have to start from the bottom and, like, be more mindful of those types of things.
Pretty much, yes. Everything is interconnected.
And as there's actually an insect like right here that's moving at the table, and the camera probably won't see it. It's literally and my first immediate thought was like, but I'm gonna let it
I think
live.
it's a fruit fly, maybe. I'm guessing.
Shout out to fruit flies.
Oh no, sorry, it's a gnat.
Oh, it's a gnat. Ooh. Yeah, special guest.
Yeah, we'll just let it be.
Sorry. And then we were also talking about how now we see a lot of more green jobs, or like a bigger green market. I don't know. Like, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I might have shared this before, but when I was graduating with my bachelor's in environmental science, I was really I was a little concerned of like what I'm going to do with my degree, because the job field is pretty like specific and narrow and competitive. But really, any job can be sustainable. I think the important part is getting educated on how you can implement sustainable practices in your job. And I'm sure there's resources out there that you can reach out to.
I was just gonna comment, like, a lot of our community are they work as landscapers, right? And so they're working constantly, like, with the environment. And I just wanted to point that out, because sometimes that goes unnoticed, that they actually are helping or working with the environment.
Yeah. And again, just like we hope to see more resources in Spanish or not just Spanish, but just translated, and reached out to our communities that are in the front lines, again, doing landscaping work, construction, agriculture. That's like pretty much our backbone.
It's a coincidence because so my dad works in landscaping, and just this week he like came home with like a certificate or a diploma because lo mandaron a hacer un training, and we were all like, we all laughed at him because we were like,
cute.
A training? What are you doing? Like, get out and start doing your job, Dad. What are you doing? But it's because it's so unusual for just a Hispanic dad who's a landscaper to be sent out for PD, for professional development, for his landscaping field, and yet he like lo mandaron a hacer un training, and he came back with his certificate of completion.
That's awesome.
And so it's super funny that's just mentioned because that literally happened just this week, and now he has that,
and we need more of that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, he's been in that field for a few years now, and so he knows a lot about the plants and whatever, and he's the only time he talks to it. No, I'm just kidding. But what he talks about a lot is just like, oh, mira ese árbol es this, or like, oh, if I had that lawn, this is how I would do it. Or he just, yeah. So the people who work in those type of fields.
It's just really nice to see like just how people connect with the environment in their own ways. And yeah, there's many ways that you can encourage your parents to, explore nature a little bit more and get connected. There's, Vancouver Bee Project, Watershed Alliance. They have upcoming family events. So yeah, encourage your parents to, learn about different species together.
Mm-hmm. Or like how you mentioned when we were talking about the bees and how like muchas abuelas like to have their rose bushes. Like I know Alma's mom likes plants a lot too.
No, yeah, she I tell her she's one with nature because she just really loves plants. As soon as spring comes, she'll go out and buy plants. Or even, I don't know how she does it, but she keeps her plants alive and I don't. But yeah.
Yeah, and again, like I know Vancouver Bee Project also has native seeds. So if she's looking, somewhere to find more of like native local seeds, Vancouver Bee Project has those. And they have a lot of like information of just how to maintain them. But I'm sure your grandma won't have an issue with that.
No, but like that's interesting to hear, right? Because I've heard about the Vancouver Bee Project through social media, but I don't think a lot of like our parents know that organization is out there, or like you said, they have like native seeds, right? So shout out to Vancouver Bee Project.
Yeah.
And that brings us to like the other topic of accessibility, especially not only for for the Latino community, but for Latino youth, like information that's specific for Latino youth, or information that's specific for like our older folks, because they also don't know as much or if anything at all about climate or climate justice, and
it comes down to us to be that bridge.
And It really does, especially because, language plays a big factor in it too. And it just makes me think about how in other countries, how does this conversation look like? Because we can only speak on, like, here.
Right.
That's true.
God, when you mentioned plants, I was going to say something and I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I can do another shout out to another organization that we work with, and that's Watershed Alliance. I've personally, like in high school, I would go plant trees, and that was very exciting. And I know that they are an organization that also does these events in Spanish. But again, I feel like not a lot of people in the community know about that, but I feel like that's something that's how you can like partake in this, like, helping our environment and just helping out one tree at a time. Yeah,
it's in many different ways. You're creating bonding moments with your family members. You're contributing to air quality, water quality, maintaining our watersheds. Very important. Again, it ties in with just how everything's interconnected and other species need that, good air quality or water quality. So it for sure look up on Watershed Alliance. They have a lot of upcoming events coming up.
And I think the tree planting takes place like every year around MLK, right?
Yeah, they're
throughout the year.
Yeah.
They have I know they switch from like Vancouver, like the Burnt Bridge Creek Trail. They usually go there, but then they also have events like in Ridgefield or like in not Tacoma. I was gonna say Tacoma, but further out there, they have a lot of events year round.
And I know like when we talk about sustainable habits and like how one can build sustainable habits, to help the planet, a lot of people bring up it's the big corporations that are doing the damage. Like if whatever I do won't help, it's because in the end, the big corporations are the one that are doing a lot of that damage. And that's, even though that's like true.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I think it's also valid for you to like take some accountability and,
Yeah. Well, it's a big task to try to tackle climate change on your own. But everyone has a part, part to contribute for for change. So just analyze, or not, but you can start with little changes, your daily habits. I would recommend start with your kitchen, like what kind of foods you're buying, and if your food is coming from like a locally sourced place, because then that supports our small businesses, supports our local economy, and then it reduces your overall emissions or your footprint.
And like we mentioned with food, not food, with clothes,
Yeah.
we know there's also like that factor of sometimes it's really expensive to get that, those really like well-made clothes, or it's really expensive to get that well-made food, or but at the same time, like some people don't have the time or the energy to like get those things because they're so busy living in the moment and like just trying to survive. And it sucks. It really sucks that is how society is right now, and that people don't have another option to think about like their well-being, because obviously the food that one consumes affects their well-being.
Oh, yeah.
Like we mentioned, like health plays a big role in this. And a quote that one of our friends just said was, nature always finds its way to balance itself. It's what we do that throws it off, which is like, sure, the corporations are having like a big impact and whatnot, but us as a collective.
Yeah. And I'll leave you with another quote is, think globally, but act locally.
I like that.
Wait, repeat it one more time. Repeat it one more time.
Think globally, but act locally.
Can we get a little sound?
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And that's the end of the podcast episode. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so, there's a lot of ways that one can, like their own little step, their own little pasito for the greater good. We're not asking for you to reverse.
It is
Fight climate change by yourself.
Yeah. But there are like a lot of organizations and local resources that one can get involved with, or just seek to further, like, ¿cómo se dice? Educate oneself. You mentioned the Watershed Alliance, and then we mentioned the Vancouver Bee Project. I know Latino Leadership Northwest as a team is also part of the Environmental Justice Committee for Clark County. So taking our own pasito as a team for trying to just contribute to
learn as well.
Yeah, just overall, like if you have, something you want to speak on, like there will be people that listen. You just got to consistently find your way. And, the more you say it, people will catch on. So, yeah, I definitely encourage people to just be active and involved.
Y como les dijimos, like, the Latino community has been recycling, okay? They've been reducing, they've been reusing with those Tupperware containers. They usan la ropa de sus older siblings. Like, my dad loves to save stuff off of the street all the time. So
I was pretty blessed that my like older cousins had really good like fashion sense or style, because I was always excited when they would pass me down their dresses. I'm like, I don't have to go shopping. I loved it.
And I think is there any other further comments? Almendra, any final words that you would like to say or leave the audience with?
Well, let's see, we've covered a lot, but just again, like my favorite quote was just like sustaining what sustains us, and that's what I constantly think about, and not just with the environment, but overall in our community. Your friends, looking after your friends, looking after your parents, making sure that they're eating well. That's like a huge global global love language is just overall making sure that we're all in a good place.
Oh, I love that. Global love language.
Yeah.
That's so cute. Pamela, Alma?
No, I just don't have any other more comments. Again, my advice would just be to really look out for these organizations and try volunteering at one of their events and just see how it is. See if you like it. You're just making, you're just planting a little tree. It's always nice.
And you get to bond with like those around you and be involved in the community, which is always nice.
And I would say to just take a moment to go outside and just appreciate what surrounds you. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the movie Timothy Green, but it's a Disney movie, I think, and it's about a little boy who like comes out of nowhere from nature or whatever, and he has like leaves on his feet, and something he likes to do is like look at the sun directly and outstretch his hands and just close his eyes and let the sun. And ever since we've watched that movie, like my mom or me, when we're walking the dogs out, we just like, and if the sun is out, we turn to the sun. We just like let it soak us.
I'm not gonna lie, that's part of my morning ritual. It actually is. I get to take my dog out for her to go potty, and I just stand a couple of minutes outside, just like absorbing that vitamin D. It's really good.
It's
refreshing.
Good. And especially here in Vancouver, okay, that sun is not out all the time.
Take advantage of it. Yes.
Yeah. So just take a moment to appreciate nature, because it really is so beautiful.
Yeah. And the more you open up to it, the more you'll receive like all these beautiful like gifts from the universe. So, yeah.
I love that.
The more you'll notice it, the more you'll just be more like in gratitude of just what you have around you.
Yeah.
Before we leave and finish off this podcast, we wanted to showcase a little of our, what would you call them?
Merch?
Swag. A little swag. So if you guys see us out in the community, make sure to stop by and check out this amazing chapstick.
We have a pen. Ooh, look, I know you pen collectors love pens, because I know I do. We got a brand new brochure here with all the wonderful information about Latino Leadership Northwest.
And a cute picture of us.
Our social media, so go follow us. Give a like to this amazing podcast.
And lastly, we have a bottle opener for those people who like to get lit con jarritos, y'all. With jarritos, because you know us Latinos love our jarritos.
Oh, for sure.
So now we got bottle openers.
My favorite one's the guava one.
The guava, el mío es el de piña.
Oh my gosh. Can I say el mío es el sidral?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't had one in so long, so I'm gonna go home and go open one with the new Latino Leadership Northwest bottle opener.
Hashtag cancel Pamela.
Oh wait, Almendra said we should go eat tacos.
Yeah, we're gonna
date
go.
night after this.
And as always, you guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Make sure to please follow our social medias, which will be linked down below, and like, comment, and share this episode and every other episode that we have out too.
Thank you, Almendra, for joining us and being our first guest on the podcast. We really appreciate your knowledge, and just having this conversation with you was really eye-opening and just very...
I just enjoyed like hanging out with y'all. So yeah, I'd be happy to come back, or we can just continue to have these conversations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You slay. And thank you all for watching. Bye. This episode was brought to you by Latino Leadership Northwest and funded by Enitai Foundation.